Chad Larsson, whose book Deathstrout is currently getting set for publication through Eric July's Represent, recently interviewed Ethan Van Sciver. Needless to say, it got quite the reaction, pro and con. The talking points on both sides are what you'd expect. In my personal opinion, Chad not pushing back on Ethan's answers to his questions wasn't entirely a bad thing. A good friend once said to me, "You gotta let people talk." Some of his answers were verifiable, including the bias that exists on Wikipedia's Comicsgate page. That will be a video unto itself. This will be the first of a few video responses to Chad's interview with Ethan, and each video will tackle a specific topic. Today's video will touch on the allegations that Eric July attacked crowdfunding.
Worried that if I came forward and said this is who this man is and this is what he does, that it was going to cost me business. But I can't allow this guy to be here circulating the way that he is in business, telling people that crowdfunding is a scam, that people are just sitting on your money. He clearly wants to wipe out Comicsgate. That's obviously his objective. When he said we will win, I do not see him fighting Marvel and DC. I see him fighting us at every turn.
The narrative at Comicsgate is that Eric July called crowdfunding a scam and attacked it, therefore attacking creators who use the platform as a means of income. But is that what Eric July really said? Let's look at it from his own words. On January 2nd, 2024, July said this: "Crowdfunding lowered the barrier of entry and changed the game. It has been a net positive." Looks to be two things here. Some have abused it, using it as a personal piggy bank where they can stumble to the finish line because they don't have a business acumen, they are overpromising and overwhelmed. The result is the same as it hurts customers' trust of the media. So Eric July begins the tweet by calling crowdfunding a net positive, hardly an attack. And the 2 points he pointed out are accurate. A lot of crowdfunders have used it as a personal piggy bank to fund their lifestyles, or worse. And many of them are indeed lacking business savvy, which is why many of those projects go unfunded and unfulfilled, because the money gets spent before the project is ever even completed. And the reply to his tweet seemed to indicate that's what he was trying to say. Indeed, at the time, Eric July's words were very clear. Some even pointed out that there were YouTube channels documenting all kinds of scams that were done through crowdfunding. Now let's look at a couple of videos that July himself put out. Here's what he says about crowdfunding in a video titled "Making Money in Comics, the Overview, Part 1.
The other thing is that people are also realizing there's alternatives now. Crowdfunding, for example, has decentralized the means. That's great, but in some ways it's a problem. People that are in over their heads and have no business bone in their body are trying to be publishers and they have no idea what they're doing. This has caused extremely late campaigns and unfulfilled promises. Worse, some now have access to more money than they've ever seen in their lives, and they end up spending it on everything else but the project. That's unfortunate because now many customers are weary of the crowdfunding aspect.
Once again, he talks about the positives of what crowdfunding has done. The negatives he brings up are in regards to individuals who don't fulfill their campaigns, not the crowdfunding model itself. He also rightfully points out that customers are weary of the crowdfunding model thanks to unfulfilled campaigns. And if you think this isn't true, just look at the comment section of EVS's Rainbow the Brute, James and Anderson's Conflict Clause Out, among many others. This wasn't the first time July addressed the crowdfunding model. On a December 26, 2023 video, he said this.
And so this gentleman had this to say. I'm going to read this first bit for you. And in reply to another guy, he says, he, as in me, is not providing an alternative to the mainstream. He's providing an alternative to publishing via crowdfunding. That is, and this is what he says, is a threat to crowdfunding publishers that already aren't making a whole lot of money. So what he's saying is that my model and our approach is a threat to people's publishing because they are late or some of these publishers are not delivering, and therefore the fact that I do, which is again, it's kind of crazy approach, the fact that I do is threatening to them. And that's what, I kind of figured that's where a lot of the shots started coming from, is that I guess people are looking at what we do at the Rippaverse and they'll say, hey, well, the Rippaverse is doing it this way. And some people feel some kind of way that there's an expectation going to be levied at them in comparison. Look, I want to be clear here. I do not personally believe that every single freaking crowdfunding project that's the norm. The norm is that there's no delivery, there's no communication with backers. Like, to me, that's just not the case. I've had experience where that, it is and isn't the case, but I don't want to operate as if that's some sort of like standard. It's not. You guys have maybe even supported some project and you got it in a relatively a reasonable, let's say, window. And you certainly, if there was a hiccup in the process, it wasn't like you were just not in contact with your people that have invested, in some people's cases, thousands upon thousands of dollars.
July had to clarify that his stance is on creators who don't deliver a project, not the model itself. He even goes on in the video to state how the crowdfunding model works in some cases versus other cases where it isn't needed, again, based on specific types of people.
And he flat out admits this. He said, what is the biggest complaint against crowdfunding comics? The long wait. What problem has Rippaverse solved? The long wait. And again, a little bit of a different model because we don't crowdfund, right? But I get it. Says, can other crowdfunders compete with this? No. Does this impact Marvel DC market share? No. Does this impact crowdfunding market share? Yes. So he's saying that we're not impacting Marvel and DC's market share. We're instead impacting crowdfunding market share because I guess he thinks that those people will find me as a threat, or he sees me as a threat, and those people will look at the other, like, I guess people entering crowdfund, which again doesn't make sense because we don't crowdfund. I know we use the sort of campaign format, and I guess he's thinking that, or he believes that, well, people are less inclined to support them because, see, this is the whole communistic fixed pie approach that I'm trying to get people out of, because just because I'm seeing success or the Rippaverse sees success does not mean that it's a knock on someone else's success, right? You shouldn't look at it that way. However, I will say this. I'll be honest. I'll be completely honest. Yes, there are going to be people that prefer my model, 100%. With that being said, I do think there are people that are in crowdfunding that can do our model, they just choose not to. Now, that's not a question for me to answer. I can only speculate as to why they don't. And I only really think my speculation is important on that, because there are some people that have made a lot of money doing crowdfunding comics, and if you do feel like my model is the superior model, they can do something that's more closer to what it is that I do. It doesn't need to be an exact replication of it, but they can do something closer to what I do for sure. But that will require like responsible reinvestment. Not everybody can do that, right? Not everybody can do that. I am totally aware of that there is a reason why there is a crowdfund, right? It's for some people, they are needing to fund the project, and the only way that project can be funded is if people, of course, give money to them, and that's that model. So that makes sense for some people. That makes sense for a lot of folks who are not going to be able to finish their product. However, I don't think that this model, it makes sense for people, especially if they're doing something, let's say in comic book sense. Let's say if you're the writer and the artist, right? So really your money is more so going to be tied up in, let's say if you get someone else to color it and letter it, and obviously the printing of it all, right? But if you have made a lot of money in crowdfunding already, then yeah, if you're responsible with your money and you reinvest it, you can get you can switch it up. Okay, you can switch it up and have something more akin to what it is that I do, though you shouldn't be pressured into do that. But if the consensus is, well, more people are more inclined to support that, then that only benefits them. And I guess it's a model or a variation of it that's more unique to them. Is something that people can work towards. But you shouldn't look at what I do as a threat.
Multiple times he clarifies the crowdfund model as necessary in individual cases and refers to his model as an alternative that can be utilized in crowdfunding, but an alternative model that no creator should be pressured into utilizing when they do crowdfund. So my question is, how exactly did Ethan Van Sciver convince his followers in Comicsgate that Eric July referred to crowdfunding as a scam? The obvious answer is they drank the Kool-Aid. Eric July never referred to crowdfunding as a scam. He rightfully pointed out the shady practices that many creators do with the crowdfunding model, in either delivering an extremely late product or not deliver at all. These are legitimate gripes that is growing louder in protest. In 2015, crowdfunder Eric Chevalier had to settle after failing to deliver his product. Ethan Van Sciver, after putting it on record that his Rainbow the Brood book, which was supposed to fulfill in 2021, would ship in 2025, he announced it would not fulfill until 2026.
Comics Exposed says, where is Rainbow the Brood? Will that ship before the end of the year? No, most definitely not. It might be finished by the end of the year. Also, did you go see Superman? What did you think? Sure would love Rainbow the Brood soon. Yeah, me too.
Despite the clear point Eric July made on crowdfunding, it didn't stop followers like Dan Lawless to falsify Eric's points, claiming that Eric July was attacking crowdfunding. And the Comicsgate followers swallowed it. Let's look at another clip from Chad Larsson's interview with EVS.
Tip of the spear defending an entire group of indie creators who need crowdfunding to survive, who aren't going to be able to do so, at this point, if things like Rippaverse carry forward. And we're seeing the end results of Rippaverse anyway. The sales have plummeted in decline. I don't know if that's because of Trashcast. I don't know if it's because of Eric. I think it's because he was speaking to people who were never really comic book fans to begin with. They just were fans of Eric.
Wow, where to begin with this one? First, Ethan's claim that Ripper fans only buy his books because they're fans of Eric July may be pure projection. There could be some truth to this, but here's the thing. Ethan put out a post on X on August 7th, 2025, in which he states, "The advantage of the mainstream is that it contains readers. I'm appreciative of backers and collectors, definitely. I don't care why you buy my comics. Your money helps the work get created, so I thank you. But ultimately, I want my work to be read and enjoyed. I don't believe folks are actually reading Rippaverse comics. I have no reason to believe folks who purchase but don't read Rippaverse shit are reading Cyberfrog either. We put ourselves in a spot where our comics are culture war tokens, and that's okay as long as the comics are also good, and as long as this fan base is also reading them and talking about them. If they aren't, then all we're doing is buying and selling product to own the mainstream, when we should be trying our hardest to eventually become the mainstream with our own stories." He stated what many of his critics have pointed out, that Ethan's own fan base may not be reading the Cyberfrog books they buy in bulk. This post by Ethan was put out after one of his fans questioned a tattoo on Heather Swain's back.
People are asking in a few places, they're just like, Heather has a tattoo? Is that canon? Heather having a tattoo on her shoulder of Cyberfrog, is that canon? The answer is yes, it is canon. I mean, I hope that, I'd like to think that some of you read Cyberfrog Blood Honey, but I mean, I guess some of you didn't read it. Heather gets the tattoo of Cyberfrog in Blood Honey, to tribute him. She draws a picture of Cyberfrog, and then she has that tattooed on her shoulder.
Also, Ethan was quick to point out Ripper's declining sales. While one cannot deny that going from $3 million with ISOM 1 to $600,000 for ISOM 3 clearly displays a decline in sales, the story is much bigger than that. You see, Ethan was being very disingenuous here. Sales for indie comics for the most part are down across the board, and to prove this point, we're going to compare Cyberfrog Wrecked Planet and Cyberfrog Red Extermination. In Cyberfrog Wrecked Planet's first 60-day campaign run, it made $835,030. It went on to make $1.2 million in 1 year, with 11,893 backers. The backer count doesn't give an accurate number of how many people bought the book, as this and the Red Extermination campaign are filled with lots of additional material besides the books, but for sake of brevity, we'll stick with these numbers. Now let's go to Red Extermination. Cyberfrog 3 made $491,699 in its first 60 days, a drop of about 41% from Wrecked Planet's numbers. And for the 2 years the campaign has been open, it has only made $843,709. It hasn't even reached $900,000 yet. In contrast, Eric July, making less money on ISOM 3 than with ISOM 1, has managed to make $600,000 its 2-month run, outselling Red Extermination's 2-month run. And the Cyberfog Prequels campaign, consisting of 2 books, has only managed $129,670 as of this video on its 25th day of the campaign. To put that number in perspective, Wreck Planet made almost $200,000 in its first half hour of launch in 2020. This is evidence that Ethan is experiencing declining sales, no doubt due to his antagonistic behavior online, as well as his extremely late books, which is piling up one after another. There will be more to cover from this Chad Larsson interview, but what are your thoughts on this? Please post your comments below, and thank you for watching.